Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. I, 21 female, am the third of 7 kids. I have 5 brothers, 24, 23, 20, 18, and 15, and a sister, 16. Because there's so many of us, our parents let us know that they could only afford to pay for 4 of us to pursue higher education. My brother started working out of high school and my sister is planning to get a GED, so this wasn't a problem until recently when my youngest sibling told us he wanted to become a doctor. Obviously, my parents don't have enough left in his college fund for that. I and my 2 other brothers, 20 and 18, are already in college. They borrowed some money and even got my older brothers to chip in a bit, but they still don't have enough to close, so they told me that they couldn't pay for my remaining time in college and asked me to drop out. They said that with that money, they would be able to save up enough in the next 3 years. I only have 2 years left before graduation and I don't want to be without a degree in the midst of a pandemic, so I said no. I'm already paying for part of my tuition fees with the money I make from my part-time job, so I also have no savings whatsoever. My parents got really upset and asked why I couldn't just make one small sacrifice for my brother's future. They said there would be no difference since an arts degree is as good as no degree and my brother is a straight-A student, so he'll definitely do well as a doctor. I feel bad about rejecting them since I know they'll just ask one of my younger brothers who are in college to drop out. But I don't intend on giving up halfway through my studies. Am I the a-hole here? Edit. Thank you for all the comments giving suggestions on other funding options. I asked my brothers who are in college and apparently my parents have went to both of them and have been rejected. So I'm pretty sure they're going to pull support for me now. I'm looking into scholarships and grants I'm eligible for. Also, since a lot of people have been curious, I'm pursuing an architecture degree which I have pretty high hopes for regarding employability. Not the a-hole. Your straight-A brother can get scholarships to help pay for undergrad. Last time I checked, med school was close to $200K. Your parents not helping with your undergrad so that they can save won't be enough. And seriously, your parents said they'd pay for 4 of 7, pay some for all or none for all. The rest is bull and sounds like fiction. I'm also one of 7 kids and this makes me so sad for OP if true. My siblings and I were told early on that if we kept our grades up and went to public in-state school, my state offers free tuition to public in-state schools for students with a 3.5 GPA or higher. Then they'd pay all of our other expenses, about 3K or 3.5K per year. Otherwise, they'd chip in the same amount as they paid for other kids, but we'd be on our own for the rest. It was equal and we all made our own choices based on that deal. 3 went private or out of state, 4 went in-state and public. No one was betting on any of us to succeed, especially not at the expense of others. First, your parents are being a-holes for telling their kids that only 4 of 7 can go to college. What kind of crap is that? Why not divide up the fund equally? Second, do not buy their bullcrap that you need to drop out. That's a complete waste of your first 2 years of school and you shouldn't stop now. I'm sorry you find yourself in this situation, but if finances are a serious issue, then you may need to take out some loans to cover the last few years. Also, are there scholarships in your discipline you can apply for? Third, I'd like to see the statistics about how many kids who say they want to become a doctor follow through. There's every chance in the world your brother waltzes into organic chemistry his second year saying F this and switches to something else. When that happens, how will you feel if you drop out on his behalf? Not the a-hole. Yep, went to a school known for its pre-med, pre-dent, pre-pharm programs. I have only a few friends who made it through these programs. What I do have is a bunch of friends who ended up graduating with teaching, business, and other degrees. All fine choices, but if you ask any of them when they switched, it was the semester after they took OChem. I have a healthy amount of respect and admiration for anyone that passed or did well in that class because I saw it crush so many dreams. Not the a-hole. Reality check. Unless your college fund is an account your parents don't control, you don't get to pick what they do with it. If they want to be a-holes and give the money they saved for you to your brother, they are entitled. But even if they follow through with their a-hole move of funding your brother's medical education over your degree, you don't need to drop out. Talk to the financial advisor at your school. They can help you apply for loans or see what your options are. You could also transfer to a less expensive school if loans aren't an option. I'm sorry you were raised by parents who think making siblings compete with each other is valuable. I hope you and your siblings can direct all of your anger at your a-hole parents instead of each other. What a crap way to raise kids. Next story. My husband's best friend Allison is staying with us until New Year's. I had to work Black Friday, but we made plans with some other friends, best friend's brother and sister-in-law, a couple from college, and a friend of theirs from high school, to the movies and get dinner. Since I work in the same shopping center as the theater, my husband dropped me off in the morning and I would meet them later. Husband texts asking if I'd be okay with the plans being tweaked. Everyone wants dinner first because a party of 8 will probably be a longer wait in the night. Not a problem, but the restaurant is back near our place, so I just have to take a lift there to make it easier. I get there and they're sitting at a 6-person booth with a chair tucked into the end of it. High school friend had to cancel at the last minute. I take the seat at the end and Allison is on one side and my husband's college friend is on my other. Allison seems surprised I even showed up. She assumed I would get my own dinner and wait at the theater for them. My husband is sitting on her other side and he asks if she'll switch with me, but she starts complaining about how her drink is already there and she feels exposed sitting on the end. I don't care, but my college friend insists on switching with me so I can sit next to his wife. Allison is very me, so on their side of the table she's talking and it's hard to get a word in edgewise. So I start a conversation with the wife, college friend, and Allison's sister-in-law. We're talking about whatever when Allison interrupts and asks if we even heard her story. We all say no and she starts to tell her story again about her plans to move to Washington after New Year's. Cool. The three of us go back to our conversation about Squid Game or whatever show we were talking about, and she keeps asking me why I'm leaving her out of the conversation. I just say offhand that we're having another conversation, and she goes, "As always, I'm excluded from original poster's Cool Girl Club figures." I ask her what that means, and she starts tearing up and tells me how I shouldn't have organized a group out where she could be the odd one out, and she's always made to be the third, fifth, seventh wheel. She changed the place and time so I wouldn't come and she'd get to feel part of the group for once. I'm like floored by this because Allison is literally never the odd one out. She monopolizes every situation and must be the center of attention. Also, she purposely tried to exclude me from this night. I tell her she's being silly and she tells me that I can't invalidate her feelings. I tell her her feelings are stupid and not valid and I leave to go get some air outside. My husband comes after me. I tell him to keep Allison out until I'm at least asleep. I just can't deal with her crying and making this all about her. I ended up hanging out with sister-in-law and my wife's college friend, and the rest of them went to a bar to hear Allison cry for hours. Am I the a-hole? Edit. For everyone saying she's probably after my husband, she's definitely after his attention, but I don't think she's after him in a sexual way. Allison dates women and was married to one for a short time. Divorce, that was her own fault, but does occasionally hook up with men. Definitely a strong lean towards women, though. Edit 2. Her brother took her back to his place last night, but I know they won't house her for a whole month. No idea what her plans are, but if her dad won't take her, maybe she can move to Washington early. Not the a-hole. To go out of her way to exclude you and then complain about feeling excluded is dumb. If she truly felt excluded a lot, which it sounds like she doesn't, she just wants to be the center of attention, then she should have told you that before dinner privately. Or she could have stopped talking about herself and joined in on the TV show conversation. She has no reason to be upset right now. She needs to learn she's not the center of attention, and she needs to not forget that you're literally housing her for more than a month. Not the a-hole. No. You're entitled to your feelings doesn't mean that your perception is unquestionably correct and no one's allowed to disagree with you. It doesn't mean your feelings are reasonable and well-founded. It doesn't mean you're justified in acting out in certain ways. It just means you privately acknowledge a feeling, rational or not, and then find some adult way to cope with it. It is telling that she tried to manipulate the timing and location of dinner so you wouldn't be there and refused to change the seating when asked, leaving you in a chair on the end, then accused you of making her the odd man out. She sounds like a lot of emotional labor. Not the a-hole. Your feelings are valid means that you can feel your feelings. That does not mean they are logical or rational or based in reality, or that they take priority over reality or others. Was your wording bad? Sure. But I'm pretty sure that you weren't telling her that her feelings don't exist when you said they were silly, and that your second response was leaning more towards your feelings exist, but they are ridiculous and irrational instead of they don't exist. Which, to be fair, is part of why feelings are valid is not an applicable statement when one recognizes the definition of valid, which ties into being well-grounded based on logic and fact. I can feel like everyone in the world hates me and be sad about that. My feelings are real to me, and that is something to be understood. But by definition, that feeling is not valid because I have no proof that everyone in the world hates me. If anything, proof for the contrary exists. But these days, in the phrase, your feelings are valid, we don't tend to mean valid in such a literal sense, but more of a condensed way of saying you're allowed to feel your feelings, even if they aren't completely logical or based on facts, which ends up just muddying the definition of valid, to be fair. Next story. My 26 male, mom 45 female got married to my now stepdad 65 last Thursday. She asked me if my son 3 could participate in her wedding and I said yes. For some context, my mother and I are white while my son is mixed with 4C hair. I'm not an expert in 4C hair, but before we had our son, my husband and his family taught me the essentials and basics. He told me that if the head hurts, it had to go. My mom said that she wanted to get her hair done alongside her bridesmaids and maid of honor, all of her sisters, and asked if my son could get his hair done too. I said yes, but that it had to be done with someone who knew how to manage my son's hair and to please stop if he showed any kind of big, as in moving, asking them to stop or saying it hurt, discomfort, and try another hairstyle. She said okay. I didn't come with them because my mom only wanted the bridesmaids, maid of honor, and my son with her, which was fine. I trusted my mom, and my husband and I went to another stylist near their place to get my hair and nails done. We finish around 1:30 p.m., but my mom texts me and says she's going to take another 2 hours because they haven't finished with my son. I say okay and go back home to finish the last things. The wedding was at 5 and around 4:15 my mom shows up with my son and rushed to another room. I ask my baby how it went and he starts to cry. He says that his head hurts and that the hairstylist pulled his hair. My mother-in-law checks his hair and says that his scalp is quite red and swelled. So between my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my husband and I undo his hair and my in-laws do another hairstyle that's much gentler to his scalp. He looked cute. I immediately go to my mom and asked if my son said something. She admits that he cried a little, but they were already there, so she told him to suck it up. I told her that my son came to us crying and that his scalp was red. She tries to dismiss me, so I add that we undid his hair and now they're giving him another one. She gets mad because she spent $250 on a professional and demands that I pay them back, but I refused. Not the a-hole. She paid $250 for them to inflict pain on her infant grandchild for one event. Let her feel the pain of wasting a large sum of money due to her own selfish wants. She should be ashamed of herself. Not the a-hole. You gave your mother specific instructions. Please stop if he showed any kind of big, as in moving, asking them to stop or saying it hurt, discomfort, and try another hairstyle. She said okay. And yet, she admits that he cried a little, but they were already there, so she told him to suck it up. I told her that my son came to us crying and that his scalp was red. She tried to dismiss me. This says it all. How could she treat a 3-year-old like that is beyond me. Not the a-hole. Telling a 3-year-old to suck it up is cruel, quite frankly. I wouldn't expect your mother to necessarily know what styles would have too much tension for your son's comfort and hair type, but once he expressed that he was feeling pain and discomfort, that should have been the end of the whole thing. I think that part of it is common sense. She explicitly disobeyed reasonable instructions that were supposed to ensure your child's well-being. She can pay the stupidity tax as far as I'm concerned. Next story. We spent Thanksgiving with mother-in-law and father-in-law. I always tell my kids they don't ever have to give hugs or kisses if they don't want to. My daughter 5 seems to feel bad for mother-in-law and hugs her. My son 7 chooses not to, and that is his choice. Mother-in-law is pretty much the only person he doesn't hug. Mother-in-law isn't a terrible person, but I've always gotten the feeling that she doesn't really like any of us, but goes through the motions out of guilt obligation. There are some cultural differences, and I know she feels she has a responsibility as a mother, even though my husband is an adult. She helped us buy a house and paid for our wedding, but never comes around. She's also extremely awkward around children. Anyway, we went because my kids love seeing all of their step-cousins, and it is always a good time. When we got there, my son wouldn't hug mother-in-law, but hugged everyone else. Note, I don't think she even wants a hug. I think this embarrasses her. Her husband tried to guilt trip my son, and I shut that down because I don't tolerate emotional manipulation. Mother-in-law at some point needed a shallot and sent her husband to the store. He brought one of his grandkids with him. Mother-in-law's husband has about 7 grandkids and is like a catnip to children. He came back with candy for all of the kids, including my daughter, but none for my son. When I gave him a what the F look, But I thought I don't owe anyone anything and I'm not responsible for other people's feelings, which is language I've used to explain why I don't force my kids to give hugs. My son was clearly very upset because he was being excluded, but also because he likes mother-in-law's husband a lot. Mother-in-law's husband said he doesn't like how my son treats his wife and he knows it sucks, but kids have to learn hard lessons sometimes. I took my daughter's candy away, gave it back to him, and we left. I said, that man will never see my son again. If mother-in-law wants to visit our house, she can. Not that she ever has, literally ever, but they will never see him again. This sucks because they have gotten close to his grandkids, and all three of his children told me that if I do this, they're done with me when I asked about scheduling play dates. My husband doesn't like what he did, but thinks I'm overreacting, and he is from a different generation and a different culture, and we should try to talk it out. But I feel like for a grown man to do that to a kid is straight up evil. I get the feeling that you don't actually want your kids to hug mother-in-law, and I'm guessing they can pick up on that too. Torn between everyone sucks here and you're the a-hole. I think stepfather-in-law most likely knows how you feel about mother-in-law and is proving a point. He was still rude, but regardless, I think you're overreacting. Also, at 7, you're teaching your son that if he doesn't get something he wants, a piece of candy, he should just cut that family member out of his life? Everyone sucks here. Stepfather-in-law was wrong to punish a child for a situation you as the parent created. You are way off base on many levels. I do not force my stepkids to hug my mother, their step-grandmother. I can count on one hand the number of times my stepkids have hugged me. They hug my husband as well as other people. Now, just because they don't hug my mother doesn't mean they exempt from greeting her. I expect them to say hello, be polite and respectful, etc. And I don't feel this is emotional manipulation in any way. Why is your kid hugging everyone except his grandmother? I'd wager a guess as to say it's because he's loyal to you and he knows how you feel about his grandmother. What if he refuses to hug your mother or you? Do the same standards apply? Are you requiring him to greet her politely and warmly regardless of whether he hugs her? I'm trying to imagine a world in which I could feel entitled to building relationships with my stepfather-in-law's children and grandchildren while excluding stepfather-in-law. You are so dramatic. How dare you try to make friends with stepfather-in-law's children and grandchildren while ostracizing stepfather-in-law? Time to make your own damn friends with kids instead of leeching off your stepfather-in-law's family. If you exclude one person, stepfather-in-law, then logically there will be social consequences for that exclusion. You and your son are both learning the simple fact. Exclude one person in a family for petty reasons and obviously the rest of the family won't do you favors and hang out with you. Actions have consequences. Grow up and make your own family friends. If you can make your own family friends, since you have such a poor grasp on social consequences.